This is called the Massanutten ring. You know, a lot of people will talk about on a ride like this how miserable it is, and that's ridiculous. It's very easy to take, you know, your health and ability to do something like this for granted. Oh, fuck. I'm not about to do that. Don't think you... 45 degrees straight up a hill. Because this is, like, immensely frustrating because it's, like, almost rideable. All right, let's take a moment to talk about the mistakes one can make out here, because I just made one. I did have one very minor OTV. Yeah, we're actually riding bikes. The infinite stairs of doom. It would be like, oh, fuck. Woo! Almost a mile straight up the hill. Everything is basically perfect. I've got some bad news. I've decided I'm gonna pull the plug here. All right, here we go. Start mile 0.0.0. Let's see if we can find where we're going. All right, here we go. All right, we're gonna record a little bit just so you can get an idea of what it looks like in the dark on the rocks. I don't know how hard this will be to see. So this is like the first major climb. You know, I'm still fresh. It's, you know, still optimistic. Trying to keep it reasonable and just ride what I can, and I'll walk if I have to. You know, trying not to go too deep, but it's a little slow going. So for the camera, I've turned the lights on bright, which maybe helps. You see a trailblaze there. For normal, I'm in conservation mode. I'm trying to conserve energy and my lights, just out of paranoia. I think I should have plenty of lights to get me to dawn, but you really don't want to get that wrong. All right, done camera. Try to capture what some of the walking looks like. So this is a little hard to tell, but it's basically very uphill, and there are rideable parts of it, but there's also chunk like that, and with the dark, I'm kind of like mounting and dismounting. This section looks totally rideable, so I'll get back on and we'll ride for a bit, but I'm definitely playing it cautious, both with the amount of effort it takes to do the uphill technical sections, as well as the obvious, you know, riskiness. Moves that, you know, I can pull on a 2-hour ride are different than this all day in the dark. Like, I almost certainly would have stayed on there normally, but come off and walk a little bit, just out of an abundance of caution. A little slower, but hopefully gets me to the end. All right, so we're in what I'm going to call the infinite stairs of doom, which is only at the beginning, but this section is basically rock stair steps for kind of interminable. My recollection is this section doesn't really get that much better. When you get up to Sherman Gap, so here's another one of these steps. I'll probably go around to the left here. But when you get up to Sherman Gap, there's also just a ton of stuff that is like no chance of riding. So I don't know, like, this is hard to say whether or not right here it might be worth riding for a little bit. One of the disadvantages of the dark is I can't see very far ahead of myself. So my default, knowing this section, is I'm better off just saving energy. I don't know if, I mean, this is like little stair steps straight up a hill. Ugh. I mean, I can trials that and then pass out, but that's not happening today. So, little peek. We'll turn. Oh, that's scary. Yeah, we're actually riding bikes. I didn't realize I left the camera on, but it's probably a good section to have left the camera on. Get an idea of what a little bit of downhill looks like. It's been a while since I've been walking, so actually riding the bike, it's a bit of a pleasure here. I guess in some of these sections I'm trying to say what things I'm grateful for. Oh, it looks like we're going uphill again. So, you know, a lot of people will talk about on a ride like this how miserable it is, and that's ridiculous. I have chosen to do this as my recreation. Doesn't mean it's not hard. Doesn't mean there won't be some, you know, physical, minor physical pain associated with being tired. But, you know, this is where I want to be. And I'm totally grateful for the opportunity to be out here. And like, I mean, one of the things that's the primary thing you might say I'm grateful for is my family. My wife in particular, she like drove down with me, helped do all these stupid drops, drove with me to the start at 4 a.m. Is gonna help pick stuff up at the end, you know, all without really asking for anything. You know, even though this is not something that she thinks is entertaining, she is willing to support me. And I'm very grateful for that, for just that unwavering, unquestioning support. So, all right, let's turn the camera off, save some battery. I'm gonna come across well in the dark, but I mean, you figure like, okay, the uphill is what's gonna kill you. Nah, the uphill will make you tired, but it's the downhill that's gonna end your day. You know, there are some sections here where, you know, you can definitely ride them, but if you make a mistake here, your day's over. Whereas, you know, you're just gonna tire yourself out on the uphills. You know, it's not gonna be a day killer. This turn is crazy. I could probably do this fine, but so, I mean, I did have one very minor OTV and nothing really bad happened, although I landed a little on my palms, so like my hands are a little sore than they would be otherwise, which is a bad thing only a little ways into the ride, but I think that'll survive. And actually, it's not a bad reminder of just like, hey, don't take anything for granted. It actually wasn't on some big move. I just stuffed the tire on some small move and had a little, you know, tip forward. So just gotta, you know, fully concentrate here. You know, this descent, it's hard to see could easily, this could be the thing that ends your day. All right, signing out for now. If I can find a free hand to turn off the camera, we'll just wait a little bit till you have to see almost stuffed it there. Got to be really active. And this is also where, like, your hands could potentially take a beating, right? Because you're, hard on the brakes, doing a lot of active pumping to get over these rocks. I mean, it is nice to be riding the bike instead of pushing the bike. I will say that part's kind of... I'm expecting to go back to pushing on the uphills. All right, so the sun is kind of starting to show up. I passed my first drop, and then there was this annoying climb here. It's not like that hard, but it kind of dragged on at just kind of a slope that was a lot of power to ride. All right, let's try not to get lost. All right, let's talk about gratefulness a little bit more while we're doing this. So, another thing aside from my wife and family that I'm grateful for is the health to be able to even think about doing this. Wow, look at how beautiful that is. So, when you're healthy, it's easy to take that for granted. But, I've had my moments, unfortunately. I've had a history of back problems and spent years where I kind of couldn't do almost anything. Let's make sure I'm still on the right route. All right, let's take a moment to talk about the mistakes one can make out here, because I just made one. Fortunately, I think I corrected it in time. One of the mistakes you can make is routing. And literally, my friend Lance, who tried to do this last week, made this same wrong turn, warned me about it. I knew it was coming up, and somehow I still missed it. It's really deceptive. This trail, wanted to lead me this way, or it just looked like visually it led this way. I got a little suspicious though when we're like going pretty big net downhill. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be going net downhill. So I think there just went, a few minutes. Fortunately, I think I caught it before it turned into, a ride ender. If you spend, half an hour off course, you're gonna be pretty pissed off. So anyway, it's just an example. So if I get back on course, where this is sort of a relatively benign stretch. I think that maybe we'll get some rocks here, but it's like briefly flat without much going on, which is unusual here. But as I say that, you start to see some rocks, although this is definitely not the kind of chunk that we're usually worried about and talking about. All right, I was talking previously, so now we've got dawn. I think I'm on the right route. When I started talking about being grateful for my health a minute ago, I was actually off course. I don't think the distraction of talking was what got me off course. I think I got off course and then got distracted. So what I was saying is that it's very easy to take, your health and ability to do something like this for granted. I have, unfortunately, had time spent with, a lot of health issues. I've had a history of back problems starting in like college, which at times have like laid me up for, months at a time. Fortunately, I was able to have procedures done to fix myself up. I also had a heart issue. I had an arrhythmia. I had AFib. And again, fortunately, seemed to have found a procedure, an ablation procedure that fixed that up. So, I'm not in perfect health. I'm in enough health to be trying this. And whether I, succeed or not, there's a gratefulness to being healthy enough to feel like this is even a possibility. So, trying to not take that for granted. Enjoy the fact that I'm out here, in those months where I was in severe back pain and like bedbound, what I wouldn't kill to be out on a bike. Even if it's like, oh, you're so tired while you're out on your bike, you got to remember how much better that still is than being unable to do this stuff. So, all right, we're getting a little more stuff here. Nothing I would consider classic hard Massanutten, but I hear this ridgeline goes on and on. So it'd be nice if there was some of it that was relatively mild. I would appreciate even if it's a long, mild stretch, that would be fine. All right, talk to you later. All right, it's a very pretty time of day here. Kind of dawn. You can see, I can see the sun rising behind me. This is basically the mellowest part of the trail I've been on. It's pretty tame in comparison to what came before it so far, and what I suspect comes after, which, I guess should talk about what it is I'm doing. So this is called the Massanutten Ring, and it's about, I think, 69, 70 mile loop in Massanutten, Virginia. You basically are riding along some beautiful ridgeline trails on a full loop of almost, I call it a caldera, although I'm sure it's not due to a volcano, but there's like a valley in the middle with ridges on either side. It would be nice in some ways if you just stayed up on the ridge 100%, but 5 or 6 times you dip all the way back down to the valley and climb back up, which adds to the route's challenge in that it has something like, 13 or 14,000 feet of elevation, which is not, it's not nothing. It's less than Everesting would be, where you're doing 27,000 feet. But to do 14,000 feet, 13,000 feet in 70 miles, it means it's almost 200 feet a mile, which, most people consider 100 feet a mile to be hilly terrain. So if you're doing 200 feet a mile, that tells you you're basically doing a lot of climbing. The other challenging thing about it is that it contains what people sometimes call East Coast jank. This here is not the best example of it. I'm somehow in the most mellow section when I'm talking about it, but I'll show and video some of the other spots. I mean, there are places where it's almost a rock scramble. You know, there's places that are completely unrideable, and I mean, they're definitely hikeable, but you almost would prefer to be using your hands and feet at the same time. And there's kind of a lot of that. So even though in theory this is a bike ride, the preparation involves being prepared to be pushing and hiking your bike for hours. So you might wonder, okay, 70 miles, how long does that take to do? Well, there is somebody who biked it in like 11 and a half hours, something in that range, which is phenomenal. But mere mortals like myself are definitely more looking in the 16 to maybe 18 hour range. We'll see. I had planned out a route or timing as if I was going to do it in 16 hours just to have something to go by, but I'm not wed to that. I'd like to, you know, finish happy, and if I'm mellow and still going along and it takes me longer, I'll be happy with that. Obviously, the longer you're out here, you know, the more energy you've exerted, but there's also something to be said for preserving energy. So you figure 16 hours of riding and hiking in kind of dangerous territory, there's lots of ways it can go wrong. So I'll stop the camera here, but one of the next things I'll talk about is all of the prep it takes to try to avoid all the things that could go wrong. All right, talk to you later. This seems worth showing. So there were a bunch of ridges like this earlier, but it was in the dark. This one is pretty similar, where you're kind of walking along, you know, the edge of this ridge, like right below the kind of top of the ridge for some reason. And honestly, like, some of it's rideable, but an awful lot of it is just like nasty from the standpoint of, like, you'd be rolling down this hill and, you know, it tends to go like really steep all of a sudden. This part looks kind of rideable, so we'll mount here and ride up. But like, let's see if we can get an example of what I was kind of complaining about. Yeah, this seems fine. A little tight. Yeah, you don't want to fall. All right, dropper, come on. Yeah, this is probably a dismount. I mean, it looks fun, but so when we're talking about ways that things can go wrong, one of the ways things can go wrong is to have a bad enough crash. So I think pretty much anybody who does this is going to have some mishaps. I don't think you can spend, 70 miles in this terrain and not make some kind of a mistake. You're going to be tired, there's going to be a slip, and it's critical that doesn't end your day, that you have few enough of those and that they're minor. And some of that is luck, but a lot of that does come down to decision making. Are you going to try to ride things, or are you, gonna walk things? And deciding when to do that, making good decisions about that, could be the difference between, finishing out here, or, even if you don't end up dead or in the hospital, it might end your day. Whether or not it's due to breaking your bike or yourself, there's a lot of consequences from crashing that correspond to a day over event. I need to capture more of this experience, because this is like immensely frustrating, because it's like almost rideable, but then it won't be rideable. There'll be something like this, and then the parts that I feel like are rideable, like I feel a little sketch, like I'm getting on in the sketch part, and trying to see whether or not I can just get a little bit of riding in and not hurt myself, not fall. I don't know, we're like rejoined with something else. That was interesting. I don't know if maybe there was a option that didn't go down low. If so, I kind of wish I'd taken it. But I saw the Massanutten blazes on the trail I was on. The blazes are here. You can see those nice orange, very well marked. And now that I have the camera on and was complaining about it, I'm done with that section. So we'll stop complaining. I don't know these trails, so I'm only just guessing. Whoa, what kind of shit is that? It's definitely not the most janky, but gives some idea of what things can look like a little bit. Yeah, and a little bit of effort. I'm trying to limit most of my efforts to not burn matches, but that was kind of fun, so. I think we're up here. It would be nice if they had a blaze. It's hard to know how this stuff looks on camera. I would say this is medium hard, not real hard. All right, moving slower. Stop the camera, I think. Why don't we see if we can make it up this while I have the camera on. Okay, I see blazes. That's good. All right, I think I'm gonna dismount and walk. I have to record this because this is ridiculous. This is like 45 degrees straight up a hill. Like, I don't know, maybe more. Kind of insanity. I'm kind of glad I don't have to try to come down this. Like, as terrifying as this is to go up, or tiring, it would be tempting and yet insane to try to ride down. Let's hope that when similar temptations come up later in this ride, I pass them up. All right, stop. Remember what I said about temptation? Well, this is the other side of this. I'm gonna try to ride it, but hopefully try to ride it carefully and not kill myself. It is steep as, not quite as steep I feel like as the thing I just climbed, but maybe this is I'm not climbing it. Okay, that wasn't that bad. Controlled braking. Woo! Interesting lines. Ugh. Gotta pick good lines. Ugh. Be smart. That was a fun section. Whew. So I think I'm losing count of how many little like slight up crests there are like this, where it's just like some steep, rocky, 30 feet. So you gotta dismount and you're almost lifting the fucking bike. Which, I mean, pushing it's one thing, carrying it around, whole nother ball game. All right, this looks beautiful. I don't know how the descent sent a little tech, but the view is really great. Fun. Question of the roll versus wee. Okay, this is straight downhill. Oh, this reminds me of like Kubla, little Kubla Khan-esque. That's a trail in the shed, but just a little bit. Just how this kind of slabby. Whew. Well, that was fun. Glad I didn't crash. Oh, fuck. I'm not about to do that. That is insane. I mean, maybe over there. Ooh. All right, good choices, Joe. Good choices. Woo. Ah, that would have been fun. I hate dismounting on the downhill part, but that was smart. You can't ride everything, all right? Don't think you... Ah, fuck. Whew. That rock came out of nowhere and hit my hand. Fortunately, totally did not see it. This has some padding, but that hurt. I'm glad that didn't cause a crash, though. Okay, gotta watch out for those. Yeah, I'm not gonna ride that. Okay, so I'm like a little bumming in that I think I'm kind of behind schedule. I feel like I've been walking a lot of stuff uphill. I think, you know, my energy level is probably okay, but okay. Oh, I need to go left here. My energy level's okay, but it's just a little upsetting to know that I'm like, you know, behind where I was kind of hoping to be. And that, you know, means a potentially longer day or not finishing. We'll see. I mean, I got a little lost at the beginning. I had that minor getting lost at the same spot Lance got lost at. I don't think either of those was a huge setback, but I do think I've kind of just, like, especially in the dark, I think my pace was just pretty slow. So I don't really know whether or not that's something I can improve on. I mean, it's light now. That presumably will help. I don't know if my problem was just I'm slow in the dark, although it doesn't bode well for the end section that I'm definitely going to be in the dark at the end as well. You know, a moment of just kind of thinking about where we're at. Don't really have much in the way to complain about conditions. The coolness is nice. You know, the trail, everything's been pretty dry. And the leaf cover could be better, but it's not really worth complaining about. I haven't really, knock on wood, slipped on leaves yet. The rocks have been very grippy so far. Any mistakes I've made haven't been from slipping. But I mean, one of the things to expect in something like this, there's going to be some highs and lows, you know, so, you know, a low of feeling like, oh, am I actually going to finish this? You know, this is a particularly fragile point. I mean, I'm not even like a third of the way in. So, you know, you're like, you know, it's a lot of stuff ahead of you to think about. So you just try to hopefully settle yourself and get through the low portion. Try to just concentrate on the next thing and, you know, trying to be in the moment, try to execute this well, because, you know, you won't get to the end if you don't execute the individual parts well. You can't just finish. So we'll see. Yeah, that's fun. Yep, gotta pay attention here. This requires full-on attention. That was fun. I did run out of my drink like 20 minutes ago, so I'm really looking forward to getting to my pit stop. I can only imagine it would be like, fuck. Yeah, caught myself. Well, that was a good save. So you're not going to get away without some saves. So I'll give myself the grace that you don't have to ride everything. You don't have to ride everything clean. And so long as I don't throw myself to the ground, that kind of a bail is all right. Not my favorite. I'd prefer not to, but it's acceptable, I suppose. All right, so gotta make sure it doesn't sound like I'm complaining here. This was not part of what I expected. It's not quite like classic double track, but I've been going for a while on something that's, you know, pretty tame for Massanutten standards. It's been kind of a nice reprieve. I mean, it's been net climb the whole time, but comparatively, you know, it's very tame. Not sure I should jinx myself. You know, I mean, I came to ride janky stuff, but I know there'll be plenty of that later. So a short or maybe even long reprieve of a section that's a bit easier might be nice. So just give them the try. Not that I'm complaining, but that last section was good for getting mileage done, but kind of boring as shit. This is more of the fun stuff. Now it's gonna wear me out, but it is kind of what I came for and what I like. Woo! Yeah, and there it ended. Maybe there's more. We'll see. We should have some descent. And I've actually seen a few people, which is weird. Getting a little torn up. Might need to put sleeves back on. I took them off to cool down. It's warm enough that I don't really want my arms covered, but getting the arms covered to not get ripped up could be nice. All right, let's take a second to talk about gratefulness. I am grateful for the people who helped teach me how to mountain bike. So I was a long time cyclist, road cyclist primarily, and I got a mountain bike late in my career. I think I was mid-40s when I got my mountain bike, and I stunk when I started. I mean, I could pedal, but I couldn't handle my bike very well. The notion of doing something like this would have been complete insanity. But over the years, I had a lot of amazing people help me out. So the one that stands out at the beginning was this awesome guy, Ben Mogren, who's a younger fella, moved away. He's like one of the nicest dudes I know. And he loves mountain biking, he loves biking in general. And when I started and was really bad, he was really good, but was willing to ride with me. And that was just so cool. It was so cool to have somebody who was patient and show me the trails, show me how stuff worked. I mean, I remember there was this time where he let me borrow his bike and it's like, yeah, you can just put the dropper down. And I'm like, dropper? What's a dropper? And I gave the bike right back to him. So he was kind of my first coach. So you remember that well. Obviously, like I rode with a bunch of my AFC teammates. Although honestly, like I mean, they have been amazing friends. You know, Brad and Lance are kind of my boys who I ride with all the time. Can't necessarily say they're responsible for teaching me a ton of skills, though. They're just riding buddies. They're both very skillful, so I've definitely enjoyed riding with them and maybe enhancing our skills together, but neither of them really took on coaching, which is cool. I think the next kind of like coach I remember having was another young guy named Ian Schwing, who is an amazing cyclist and has amazing skills. And I think I tried to offer to pay him, and he said I could pay him in tires. So I think I bought him some Aspens, and we did some lessons together. He teaches like camps and stuff, so he knows what he's doing, although I think I got him early on before he'd had a lot of coaching experience. But that was a pretty cool thing. I also managed to talk my buddy John Posner, who's a legend, into riding around with me and showing me some things. I still remember Paz saying very nicely that I had bad position but good recovery instincts, which I think was sort of like, you're riding like shit, but somehow you're not falling. And he showed me a bunch of stuff about how to, move the bike separately from my body and just basic stuff. I mean, he's an amazing coach, an amazing rider. And then I had the great fortune to be able to ride with, as a coach, Chris Etaw. So Etaw is a multi-time world champion at 24-hour racing, which not surprisingly means that he knows how to ride a bike. So getting the chance to ride with him, was a really great experience. He taught me a lot about some of my first lessons about how to ride rock gardens. He showed me some of the, am I on? That doesn't look like the Massanutten Trail. Better go back and make sure that I'm on the right trail. So yeah, Chris showed me a bunch of skill stuff when I really didn't know what I was doing. So that was really useful. And then so one of the things that, there's Massanutten. One of the things that inspired me to start taking lessons and practice more seriously was, initially when I was riding, I was kind of just throwing myself at stuff, which is not really what I would recommend for people to do. And I had what was kind of a lame little crash where I tipped over, but there was a little bit of a fall off, and I stuck my arm out and broke my wrist. And after that it was kind of well, maybe I should know what I'm doing a little bit more. So I took lessons with some of those friends, and then I signed up for something that was kind of cool for me, which was the Ryan Leach Connection, which is this online coaching thing where you kind of follow their online lessons, video yourself doing the skills, and get feedback from coaches, including at times feedback from Ryan Leach, who is a former trials pro rider and all around both nice guy and just amazingly skillful rider and teacher. And I actually do well with that. I enjoyed videoing myself, and some of their skills, not surprisingly, lead towards basically teaching trials to mountain bikers so that they're more skillful. Because some of the most skillful mountain bikers have some trials experience. So I actually transitioned a little bit where after doing the Ryan Leach Connection stuff for a while, I started practicing some of the trial skills and eventually got myself a street trials bike and found that there was a little community around trials riding online, and made some friends in that community. So there's a buddy now of mine, a guy named Aaron Lutzy, who goes by Super Rider, and for a while he had a cool morning Discord and video thing where he would work on making his videos, but while having a streaming chat. And I participated in that for quite a while, just to kind of ask questions and, hey, I'm working on this skill, do you have any recommendations? And that community has been great. I still keep in touch with that Discord, although I kind of haven't been riding trials nearly as much, but I will say that having learned trials and trials tricks, it definitely translates to a lot of this kind of riding in Massanutten, or other very technical places. Like the slow speed stuff, slow speed control is something trials riders practice a lot. So I practice that a lot, and I'm okay at trials. I can, compared to quote unquote real trials riders, I stink. But compared to people who haven't seen trials before, they can be pretty amazed by the stuff that you can do. I mean, I can back hop, I can do gaps, I can do some front hopping. I can obviously track stand and pivot, and basically, move around in place kind of arbitrarily, which is not something that you see as a common skill. So most people are impressed just by track standing, much less back hopping. Anyway, so that's the set of people who have helped get me there. Oh, and then I guess after that, I had the pleasure of a couple other coaches that I sought out online just for one-off lessons here. So one of them is a legend of this area, a guy named Harlan Price, who runs a coaching thing. Is it still morning? I don't know if I should say good morning or good afternoon. Anyway, have a good day.
What?
So, Harlan was really helpful in like teaching me how to turn. Hey, thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
And then after Harlan, I kept sampling other coaches and lessons, and last year I took a lesson with Hillary. Gosh, I forget Hillary's last name. I apologize, Hillary. Hillary's great. Hillary coached me from the Frederick watershed, and she taught me all about using my knees. It's funny, different coaches, pick up on different things, and I think there's a lot to work on. And especially both Harlan and Hillary had me when I had trial skills, but in some respects I couldn't ride my bike fast. And they helped teach some of the, improved turning skills, which I'm still not, a amazing, least skillful rider, like downhill and turning, but yeah, I'd rather just slow down and crawl through things than have to turn. Interesting little descent to get to talk through. Whoa, almost stuffed it there, but managed to save that. I'm paying back a lot of that climb in this one descent. All right, so I think that's the whole how to go from a mountain bike noob to, on the skillful side, I guess. Maybe not a pro, but not bad on the skills front. He says, as hopefully doesn't. Could do a better job of looking ahead. Let's see how we're going to get past that. I don't know if we are going to get past that. So I'm not sure how this is going to look on camera, but I do feel like I have to capture it as part of the ring. So I'm like, I don't know, 32 miles in, something like that. And there is this straight up the hill. I can see that it goes for, I don't know, almost a mile straight up the hill. And I think I'm about halfway up right now. I haven't taken a pedal stroke on the bike. This has been just pushing. Gonna get to really test out how my hike bike skills are. I feel like I'm barely moving. The struggle just to, you know, keep the bike going forward. So yeah, part of the running experience, you can kind of see it goes on forever. All right, that's all. It's been a while since I've recorded anything because, yeah, things are not necessarily going great. Haven't hurt myself or anything, but I'm going super slow and I feel like slowing down. It's slowing down, which is not a good sign. This stuff is pretty crazy here. This ridge line is definitely not easy. I haven't ridden nearly as much of it as I would like to be riding. Not quite sure what to do about that, but oh boy. Wow. Not too bad. I mean, on a good day, I do that. Whoa, a person.
They're coming.
Thank you. I guess we can get a little bit of short. This is the Short Mountain Ridge. I mean, on the plus side, the conditions are just great. It's a little bit cool. The sun is out. I mean, everything is basically perfect. That said, I'm not quite full zombie, but I don't have quite the energy I had at the beginning. All right, I've got some bad news. I've decided I'm going to pull the plug here. I'm fine. I mean, I'm like very tired. I don't know if that's 100% of the reason I'm decided to call it. I've kind of looked at the timeline, and based on, you know, getting to the next drop at like 6, which is what it looks like, optimistically, I would finish at like 11, which would mean 4 hours in the dark, which I'm not really prepared to do. In fact, I kind of hated riding in the dark earlier when I was fresh. The idea of when being totally exhausted, riding in the dark for that long just feels like that's bad decision making, and finishing as a zombie with a chance of like hurting myself is not really what this is about. So I, will have done roughly 14 hours. I think I'm probably going to do about 45 or 6 miles. I've had like a really fun day. I feel like I gave myself, the best chance of trying to do this, and I wasn't really up to it. If I had to analyze, like, why am I going so slowly? Well, I think fundamentally it's like this, where I'm walking these parts where fresh, of course I could ride this, but the problem is for me, at my current cycling strength, that is like not an all-day effort. So spending those efforts on these ridge lines repeatedly, is just not something I can do. So I've ended up walking so much of these ridge lines, and walk a bike is not really my strong suit. I don't do cyclocross, I don't run. I mean, I'm moving forward, but I'm not especially fast at it. Lance joked that this is like one of the world's hardest duathlons, and given that I don't do any of the running kind of things, it maybe isn't a surprise that I'm a little too slow at the non-bike part. And unfortunately, I'm not strong enough on the bike to just ride everything anymore. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm old. I used to be a stronger cyclist. I'm fine with that. I'm happy that I get to still cycle. I am not at my peak fitness. Sure, if you're like a former pro and you're 50, you probably are still strong enough to do this. As a former Cat 3, I guess I'm not that surprised that, I'm not at peak strength to be able to do this. So anyway, that's my decision, and hopefully looking forward to meeting my wife soon.